Giacomo is going to be speaking about his work in creating a company, and some of you might be considering going down that route, and he'll talk about his experiences in doing that while still doing his own consulting work. Giacomo.
Right. Okay. Everybody clear on this? Well, I think it's, we're being proactive about this, right? Which means that there isn't any case law yet, because the law hasn't even started. So there's a lot of stuff that, frankly, we're just guessing at, I think is the fair thing to say. But I was holding my breath when somebody asked, well, does forming a company protect you in any way? And I was afraid he was going to say no. Well, in that case, we could be all going home, because that's what the next part of the discussion is about. But luckily he said yes, so it should confer some degree of protection. Before I go into an extensive discussion here on this, let me ask you, show of hands, who here has or is a business as defined by, do you have a corporation? Are you a corporation? Okay, so that's a good third of the people here. And that's either S or C, right? S or C, that covers all of the people, all the people who raise their hands, yes? Okay.
About LLC.
Okay, that's next. So who has an LLC? Okay, about a fifth or so, or sixth of the people here. Who here has neither an LLC or a Corp? Okay, that's half. Okay, of those, do you consider yourselves a self-employed, like a sole proprietor? Is that most of the people who raise their hands? Okay. All right. So what I'm going to talk about is how to form a company, or the steps that I took to form my company, which is an S-Corp. Okay. So S-Corp is just a corp that has made an election in front of the IRS to be treated as a different kind of corp. And it has tax implications. We'll go into that to much detail, but basically it's a corp. It's a corporation. I did look into forming an LLC instead, and I opted for a corporation. Just very briefly, the difference at a very high level is with a corporation you can give out shares. With an LLC you really can't, or it's much more limited to the degree to which you can grant ownership in your company.
I went to your next slide.
Thank you. All right. So obviously, how to form a company can be the subject of MBAs. So we're not going to cover everything here. I do have a lot of notes and a lot of pointers that didn't make it into the slides. So if you're interested in learning more, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll punch you, or I'll send you the full PDF. But basically, this is the idea. No, I just want to be able to read it. So, if you are willing, or if you're interested in continuing to do your independent work, and are you looking to form a company in order to shield yourself or protect yourself, or more easily demonstrate compliance with AB5, well, then this is one of the ways to do it, is to form a corporation. And I am not a lawyer, I'm not a CPA, so there's a lot of things that I may get wrong. Also, some of the information may be dated, because I did it essentially 10 years ago. Most of the things I probably have not changed, but some of the details may have. So your mileage may vary. So just as quick background, I found the Kinetic River Corporation almost 10 years ago, and went full-time, quit my job in a year and a half later. We're in high tech, we develop hardware for the life sciences, blah, blah, blah. I won't read everything. But bottom line, we've been doing well, and so this model has worked for me, and this model does include revenue streams, include government grants, expert witnessing, customized products, and engineering consulting. So a bit of everything. And in fact, you'll be your own counselor on this, but having multiple revenue streams is generally a good idea in any business. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to assume that most of the people here already have a purpose in mind for forming a company, already have a business model in mind, meaning some kind of a consulting gig, have some idea of a business plan, meaning where is the money going to come from, where's the revenue going to come from, and if needed, where the funding will be coming from in order to set the company up in the first place. By the way, the legend here is on the right. I try to estimate the kind of burden that you might have in terms of dollars, time, and or equity involved in each of these steps. And you may decide to have a business partner. So, company, Latin means eat bread together, right? And so that means that usually there's more than one person to eat bread with. So a company generally can mean that there's more than one person. You can be a company, a one-man company, one-woman company, but sometimes you may consider having partners. Anyway, if there's a check mark, it means that most of you will probably have already either done this or decided that it's not for you. So let's keep going. So you have to choose a business structure, so either a sole proprietorship, LLC, or Corp. And LLC or Corp probably give you more protection, but again, Chris can maybe comment on this, than just being a sole proprietor. Maybe more easy to demonstrate that you're an independent contractor if you have a company defined as either an LLC or a Corp. Obviously law firms and accounting firms would give you more detailed and up-to-date info on this, but that's kind of a high level. So having a business address is surprisingly important, at least in my experience, because in some cases having the wrong address or a PO box may make things convenient, but may actually disqualify you from certain things, like getting some kinds of government grants. They won't give you a grant if you have a PO box as your business address. So if you want to have your business address as your home, that may be fine, but then somebody may have a problem with that. Well, you're not a real business. This is just your garage. What are you doing? And so sometimes you may consider getting a co-working space address where you get the mail sent there, and then you pick it up and you work there sometimes, or actually having a real lab or office someplace. Choose a business name. That's also quite important, but again, we could go on each of these for quite some time. Having a business domain name that you register, GoDaddy or some other site like that, generally that helps you to demonstrate that you're an independent business. You have several ways in which you advertise and you promote your business, and websites are obviously a key way in which to do that. And then you can get a website. You may also want to figure out whether you want to register the name of your company and or the logo as a trademark. I did. It just took some time, mostly, not much money, and that can also add to the overall level of perception. Are you a real business or are you not? So getting the proper forms and filing them, there's quite a few. So you have to get a federal employment identification number or employer identification number from the IRS, the equivalent of your social security number, but for a business. I found it useful to get a corporation documents kit, basically a pack. You can go to CorpKit, for example, online, and then they send you a pack, they send you a stamp, a corporate stamp, all the ledgers of your shares and minutes, templates of the minutes of your meetings and things like that. And then you have to obviously file them timely way. If you decide that you want to be an S-Corp, which has tax implications, then you need to file that form with the IRS, and your accountant will advise you as to when's the time to do that and how to do it. If you're going to do product sales, you have to decide whether you're going to have tax-exempt product sales. We have those too, so we had to decide, how to do that and get a tax-exempt certificate from California, and that's another layer of paperwork that you have to go through. So you have to submit incorporation papers to the California Secretary of State. So that's actually what fundamentally, at least in my mind, makes you a company. The moment we received our signed and stamped articles of incorporation from the California Secretary of State is the day that a company was officially born. Okay, so until that happens, you're not really a company. I mean, all this other stuff it's also important, it's also necessary, but this is the date that the company actually comes out of the womb, so to speak. You may decide to submit a fictitious business name. Well, actually, you pretty much have to submit a fictitious business name, even if your name is not fictitious. Like in our case, the name of the company is Kinetic River. We didn't want to submit a another name, like widgets and gizmos, to do business under. But you still have to essentially publish the name of your company in a newspaper or a magazine of local distribution in order to comply with the law. And so this is called a fictitious business name application. And again, all of these documents there's lots of guides, with links that tells you where to find these things, but you need to do that. And so this advertisement essentially goes in some middle page of the Palo Alto Weekly or the San Jose Post Register or whatever. And after that's been there for a week or 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever the term is, then that satisfies that particular requirement. And then you can say, yep, I've done it. I've let the world know that I'm in business, and that satisfies the county or the state or whoever it's supposed to satisfy. In many cities, you have to get a business license. It doesn't cost very much. You still have to fill out an application and send it in. And sometimes they'll have a problem with what you claim is your classification and what they think is your classification. Sometimes they may ask you to change it or go back and figure it out. So that's another thing to think about. Having a company bank account is something that is normally considered very important to ensure that you have completely separate finances and accounts payables and accounts receivables from your own personal. It's just a better idea regardless, but it's also, from a legal perspective, is quite important. If you commingle your finances, that doesn't look good, in my experience, in dealings with entities that would have an interest in showing that you're not a real business. So making sure that you have a separate corporate bank account is a good step to take. We'll skip some of this other stuff. The DUNS number and classification codes are important for certain government dealings, and so we'll skip that in interest of time. So this goes into the operations aspect of things. So in order to be a company and actually perform and execute everything that you need to do as a company, you need a lot of help. Some of it can be internal, and some of it can be contractors, right? So now you're going to be also working the other side of the fence. And so you're going to be contracting on a bunch of things that are not in the usual routine of your business. So bookkeeping isn't what Kinetic River does. Nevertheless, we do need to bookkeep, and so we have somebody keep the books. So we contract with somebody to keep the books for us. We contract with somebody to do the accounting for us. Legal, Johnson & Suits, right here, third row, and others, other law firms, right? So, and all of these, as I mentioned, or at least I wrote at the beginning, we have relationships, so disclaimer, right? So I'm not putting a plug necessarily for any and all of these. I'm just saying you're going to need some people to help you with some of the stuff that is probably not in the normal course of your business. And it does help to find people who are good at what they do, because otherwise you're going to be spending more time and more money than you really want. I think that's all. Yes. Okay, so why don't we open up for questions on just this specific set of aspects of the discussion, and then